Welcome to the Daily Agenda. So tonight we're going to focus on the allegation that Tucker Carlson is trying to bring down Tommy Robinson, which is very interesting, I find, and it could succeed if it's true. However, first of all, I want to point out to a couple of clowns who came on here ranting about me promoting English nationalism whilst wearing a Welsh dragon cap. Oh dear. How very embarrassing for those two clowns. That is the white worm. It's the white dragon. Yeah? Of England, not Wales. So, if any clowns are going to come onto this show and make such comments in future, I'd advise you to do just a modicum of research, thus establishing that you are some form of nativist and you do have some form of functioning brain cell before you make such idiotic comments, which I just sit back at and think, my God, do I laugh at this or do I despair at the stupidity of these people? You know, in essence, I'm trying to educate people, but when people come on and spout abusive remarks of that nature, then I can't respond to them in a pleasant and respectful fashion because they don't deserve it. And that's all there is to it. And talking of respect, Tucker Carlson has no respect whatsoever for Tommy Robinson. And the furore has been growing all over social media. And now Tommy has gone into an absolute meltdown, a rant. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen him go into quite a rant of this nature for so many days consistently regarding anything in the past. But this one has really got to him. And the reason why is because he's a Zyobot and his puppet masters are pulling him strings and telling him basically that he has to react to this in the most virulent way possible because Tucker Carlson is an even bigger name than Tommy Robinson. And Tucker Carlson could, in actual fact, finish off Tommy. Wouldn't that be quite a sight, in actual fact? Not that I actually think Tucker Carlson's a friend of nationalism, certainly not nativism, in any way, shape or form. But it would be quite amusing, wouldn't it, to see Tucker Carlson bring down Tommy Robinson. In fact, I think it would be hilarious. It's certainly something that we can get the popcorn out, Mind you, I don't eat popcorn anymore because Crohn's disease. But anyway, you get the point I'm making, don't you? Could Tucker do it? Absolutely right, he could. It all depends if he's prepared to launch a concentrated series of attacks on Tommy's character and expose the truth about him. That, in essence, I think would well and truly bury Tommy. He'd still retain most of his Todds, or the Tommy Todds, here, who just worship him no matter what, because they've always worshipped him. The gammons in their late 40s who basically over the hill drank far too much ale and snorted far too much coke and cheap whiz. Those types will always worship Tommy. But, this is about breaking the international spell. See, we all know that Tommy is an Israeli agent with an Irish passport and Irish citizenship, I might add, and Irish ancestry. Of course, the Irish don't want him either. We found that out, didn't we? That the vast majority of Irish people who came on here said they don't want Tommy Robinson and that passport should be stripped from him. It's a very interesting point because we don't want him either. Perhaps Israel could take him because they own him, don't they? And isn't that the point, really, that we're all making about Tommy and the point that we've made about him since the very outset of the English and Jewish Defence League? Sorry, the EDL is what it became known as later, wasn't it? So, could Tucker do it? Well, I noticed the academic agent, Nima Parvini, who's spending, he's having a bit of time off from trying to reinvent Joseph Stalin. Unsuccessfully, I might add. That reinvention will never succeed. However, he's taking some time off from that, and he's now making very reasonable points about Piers Morgan. He believes Piers Morgan is going to be unleashed as an attack dog to bring down Nick Fuentes, and he believes he could succeed. I don't believe Piers Morgan could succeed, quite frankly. Fuentes, who calls himself the spiteful mutant, is perfectly well accustomed to spiteful encounters of the like he'll have with Piers Morgan. It will be thrilling, in actual fact, to watch the encounter, but Nima is absolutely right Piers Morgan is a snake, is an establishment criminal involved in serial hacking, bribing of public officials, and insider trading. They've been prosecuted for any of it because of his establishment connections, old boy Watto. That's right, he's an establishment boy all the way through, and a Vox Pop operator. We saw the fact he was a Vox Pop operator during the lockdowns, didn't we? Yes, during the lockdowns when he was apparently the king of anti-lockdowns and the people's champion. As I told a friend of mine at the time, he's not a people's champion. He's just a Vox Pop operator. The media create these things. In fact, when I was training as a journalist in 2001, they actually take you through a whole module of how to be a Vox Pop operator. Yes, and I actually got an honours diploma with distinction in that course, the highest mark anyone could get. So yeah, it shows I paid attention. So yeah, I know what a Vox Pop operator is when I see one, and that's all Piers Morgan is. So they're sending in their Vox Pop operator. Now you must remember Piers Morgan and Tucker Carlson, whilst they have many differences ideologically and politically and religiously, they're actually, friends. They're on the same wicket or the same ticket. In truth, that's my opinion. And so Tucker's going after Tommy. And I think he could succeed, definitely succeed. He's in a totally different league to Tommy Robinson. If they do unleash Tucker Carlson against Tommy, his international aura is going to be absolutely destroyed. Yes, I can hear everyone, all nationalists in this country, cheering in the background. Absolutely, but don't cheer too quickly. It's not been done yet, has it? Although we'd all like to see it done. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Tucker, I think, would absolutely demolish Tommy, if he really turned it on. And if that's what he wants to do, that can be achieved. Absolutely, no question at all. Could Piers Morgan demolish Nick Fuentes? I think it's more likely that Nick Fuentes would actually rip Piers Morgan to shreds and go down fighting, ripping him to shreds, in truth. I mean, I don't like Nick Fuentes, and I've made it perfectly clear why, because he's a Christian fundamentalist and a rabid pagan hater. But in truth, credit to him, he's assembled over a 5 million following on Rumble, which Tucker himself says is just crazy. I guess it is, really. But Americans like Britons and many Europeans are desperate and screaming out for some form of help, aren't they? Some form of succour. And, people like Nick Fuentes come along and say, we need to do this, we need to do that. And, they're all for it. I'm not offering anybody any pipe dreams. And I don't want a fan club either, to tell you the truth. I don't want anybody worshipping in me because I'm not an idol, I'm not a messiah. I'm just a nationalist who's trying to rebuild nationalism. And to do that, we've got to stop people like Nigel Fake Farage and Tommy Robinson. And so if Tucker brings down Tommy, and he definitely could do it, I absolutely do not doubt that whatsoever. Not in the slightest. That would be good for us. But will Tucker do it? I mean, what's in it for Tucker to totally destroy the international aura of Tommy Robinson? And of course, let's say he did succeed in doing it, which he could. It would only take, I think, probably several podcasts to demolish Tommy completely. But you see, the Zionists, his puppet masters in Israel, wouldn't discard him. They'd do everything in their power to counterattack and rebuild his international aura, and the battle would simply go on. They hate Tucker with a passion, and Tommy's their little Ziobot. On a day when we saw Elon Musk, well, quite frankly, I can't use the exact words because this is YouTube and there's an awful lot of censorship, sensitivity over certain phrases, isn't there? But I think what we saw in the last 24 hours from Elon Musk on Twitter is that, has the man taken leave of his senses? How could anybody so deluded as that and assemble such a great fortune? Well, I think it's because people rightly say he's just a puppet, which he is, quite frankly. But, Elon can keep injecting the money into the Tommy Robinson Roadshow. So, in essence, what we have here is a war going on. So, Tucker's not going to be tasked to bring down Nick Fuentes. That was never his agenda. No, Piers Morgan is being given that task. That will be a battle royal, absolutely, without a doubt. I don't doubt it. And I think Nick Fuentes will well and truly have his work cut out. But I think it'll pierce Piers Morgan's armour substantially. Maybe you should just accuse him of being an insider trader, a phone hacker, and a briber. You know, a crook. In other words, a British establishment crook. That'd work wonders, quite frankly. But I don't think he would he? Because very few people have got the courage to say it in public. I've got the courage to say it. I've been saying it about Piers Morgan for years, since the Hackgate scandal. In fact, I've been critiquing him, or slagging him off, as some people would say, since well before Hackgate, in truth, but certainly during and after Hackgate, immediately after. Yeah, he didn't fool me in the slightest. But that is going to be the real battle, Fuentes against Morgan. If Fuentes holds his own and triumphs then that will fail, and that will leave Fuentes wide open to continue mounting his attacks on the Zionists in the United States and the Ziobots, like Tommy. And although Fuentes himself doesn't really go for Tommy that much, so that's where I would say Tucker Carlson is going to come in and up the ante. But again, it's all about determination and willingness to do it. And Tucker Carlson most definitely could do it, because he's got all the tools at his disposal, and he's got a huge media machine, far bigger than Tommy's. And apparently he doesn't seem to be much concerned about taking on Zionists. So I would say probably, the next few weeks, possibly the next 2 to 3 months, if these battles take place, should be very interesting. But it's long overdue, isn't it, bringing down Tommy? Will Tucker Carlson actually do it? We all know for a fact, I think, that he could do it. I think he could do it quite easily. Tommy would just have a massive tantrum, spit his dummy out of the pram, and probably rush out of the studio and snort some cocaine, which is what he usually does, and then probably threaten Tucker's family using the likes of Glenn Saffer. Oh my goodness, honestly. Yeah, so I just had to get that one in. Yeah, it's very amusing. But yes, absolutely. I think there's going to be some very, very interesting machinations taking place in the next few weeks, certainly in the next few months. But the next few weeks, it's going to be quite a build-up to the battles ahead. Fuentes and Piers Morgan. Now, that's one I'd like to see more than Tucker against Tommy. Tommy being demolished by Tucker is a strategic consideration. That's all it is, as far as I'm concerned. Tucker can definitely do that. As I said, it all depends if he wants to do it, if he turns it on. Piers Morgan, however, will definitely go in there with every ounce of venom he's got in his rotten soul, quite frankly. It's going to take an awful lot to summon that up. And he will try and finish off Nick Fuentes, and he'll get the shock of his life. So yeah, absolutely, the massive battles with Zog. Somebody said the other night, you're an old school nationalist, aren't you, using that phrase? Well, yeah, I guess I am, really, yeah. But that's what it is, isn't it, IPAC? This whole drama, this entire political or geopolitical pantomime is Zog. It's the battle against Zog. And Fuentes apparently is totally committed to it. Tucker's totally committed to it. So it's interesting, isn't it? One attacks Fuentes and the other one attacks Tommy. What's that one all about? It's called counterbalance. It's called maintaining the pantomime, quite frankly. But in truth, if Tucker succeeds and brings down Tommy, that's going to cause a great deal of consternation here. That would be brilliant to see. Fuentes, as I said, I think Piers Morgan will get the shock of his life in that encounter. Fuentes will take some big hits as well, but no. Fuentes, I absolutely guarantee you, put my money on Fuentes, he'll win that one. Absolutely, without a doubt. And, everything's looking good for us, isn't it? Surely, if you understand the point that I'm making, all of our enemies appear to be at war with each other. What's not to like? Thank you for tuning into the Daily Agenda, and I'll speak to you again soon. Have a good night. Take care. Bye-bye.